Bueno, entonces creo que vamos a
So, I
empezar.
think we are going to start.
Y para explicar,
And to
Sara
explain,
Jyoti me va a traducir a mí
Sarjoti is going to translate
y
me,
Paula va a traducir a las otras.
and Pau is going to translate the others.
Entonces, esperemos que va a salir como una
So,
conversación,
we hope it's going to turn out like a conversation
porque van a tener dos voces separadas,
because
dos
there is going to
voces
be two separate
diferentes.
voices.
¿Ok? Bueno,
Okay?
chicas, bienvenidas.
Well, everybody, welcome. Welcome, girls.
Bienvenida a Vaya Sara.
Welcome to Abaya Sara.
Hola. Hello.
A Ñana Dakini
Welcome to Niana Dakini.
Hi.
y María Elena.
And welcome to Maria Elena.
Hello.
Entonces vamos a empezar.
So we're
Quería
going to
que
start.
las tres se
I
presentaran
wanted the three
para
of
que
them
la
to
gente sepan un poquito
themselves
de
so
cada
that
uno de
people know a
ustedes.
bit about who they are.
Para ahora, muy poco, simplemente quién eres,
First, why
dónde
don't you introduce
vives,
yourselves?
un poco cómo vives, si vives sola o lo que
A
sea,
very small introduction.
para
You can say
introducirte,
how you
para
live, where you
presentarte un
live,
poquito
so
a
that
la
people
gente.
can know who you are.
Y después tengo algunas preguntas que
And
voy
later
a
I'm going to
preguntar a
ask
cada
a
una.
few questions.
Pero
I'm going
Abaya
to
Sara,
ask each of
¿quieres
you.
presentarte
But
para
first of
que
all,
te
Abaya Sara, would you
conozcamos?
like to introduce yourself so that you get to know you?
Claro. Of course. Hello. Good evening. For the ones that are not in Venezuela, my name is Abaya Sara. I got ordained in 2019 in Mexico. And now I am the chair of the Buddhist Center in Merida, Venezuela. It is the only Buddhist center in this country.
Gracias. Ya te vamos a preguntar más cosas, pero
We are
para
going
ahora,
to ask you
a
some
conocerte.
more questions later on, but thank you for introducing
Ñana
yourself.
Dakini, cuéntanos un poco de ti.
Niana Dakini, tell us a bit about you.
Well, I am Nana Dakini, and I live in Mexico City. And what I do is, among many other things, is that I am a yoga teacher, mainly. That's how I earn my living.
Qué bien. ¿Y
That's
María
very
Elena?
good. And Maria Elena, can you tell us?
Hello, I am Maria Elena, and I lived many years in Merida, Venezuela, but now I live in the capital, in Caracas, and I am a Mitra training coordination, and I am a teacher at the local university in Caracas.
Pues ahora cuéntanos un poquito.
Now,
También voy a empezar con Abaya Sara.
I'm going to start with Abaya Sara.
¿Cómo te has involucrado con el budismo?
How did you get involved with Buddhism and Triratna?
Cuéntanos un poco de cuándo y cómo.
Tell us about when and how, etc.
Yes. Well, I got involved 27 years ago. 27 years. 27 years ago, I went to the Buddhist Center for the first time. And there I met some other members that had just founded the Buddhist Center. And I got hooked from the very beginning. And for many years, I was looking for ways of integrating my life better. And that is how I have been able to overcome several obstacles in my life.
¿No querías decir otra cosa?
You wanted to say something more?
I wanted to say that I am so grateful that this is one of the reasons why I am wanting to give back because I have received so much.
That's very good.
Dices que vives en México, entonces
you say you live in Mexico
cuéntanos
City.
qué es tu conexión.
Tell us,
bueno, cuéntanos un
connection?
poquito de México, pero ¿por qué tienes tú una relación con gente en Venezuela?
How do you have a relationship with people in Venezuela?
Well, It's a very interesting question. I got involved in Triratna when it was the FWBO, probably 22 or 23 years ago. And that's where I met several Dharmacharis and Dharmacharinis from different geographical areas in the world. And when I received my ordination name 19 years ago, Parami explained the name, and she said that she was giving me a grand name because of the Dakini part, because she thought that me being Mexican, I was at some point going to bring Dharma teachings to the rest of the continent. And it is a very huge continent. And I think it is one of the things that I remember the most. I took it as a mission. I think that our ordination name has this part of being a mission, a vision in life. And at some point, it was needed in Venezuela that to bring connections to the Mitras to Dharmacharinis, because they had never met a female order member in the 20-something years that the Buddhist Center had been working in Venezuela. So at that moment, I immediately said, yes, I can do that. And when I said, when do you want me to be there? They said, as soon as possible. Is it possible for it to be in 2 or 3 weeks? I really had no idea what I was getting into. I just got that impulse, and I remembered that those words from Parami 20 years ago in my ordination. And that is how I started getting involved in Venezuela, going back and
Qué
forth.
lista soy, ¿verdad?
How clever I am. Am I not?
Gracias. Bueno, voy a volver un poco a hablar de tus visitas y tal.
I'm going to come back to
María
speaking
Elena,
about your visits
cuéntanos un poco
to
de
Venezuela.
cómo tú
But
conocías
first
a
of all,
Frida.
let's listen to Maria Elena. How did you come across Triratna?
I got to know the Buddhist Center a year after Abhayasara, when I was a student at university, because I studied and got my degree in political science. And back then, it was very difficult for women because we couldn't become mitras. It's a story that I tell people every time I can, because that's very important for me. And so many years later, things were different and I could become a mitra. And the first Dharmacharini that I met in Caracas, when she first arrived in Venezuela, was Ñana Dakini. And that changed something in my life. That opportunity of having her there and having her involved in our training coordination process in Venezuela has been a very, very important stepstone in our lives.
Bueno, muy bonito, gracias a las
Very
tres.
nice to hear you speak about that.
Sara, cuéntanos un poco de la situación de Venezuela. En general me refiero a la sociedad,
the society,
cómo es vivir allí, qué es la situación
how is it
ahora
to live there, and what's the situation
los
like
últimos
right
años.
now and in the recent years.
Well, especially the last few years, we have had to face a very difficult time. Economically speaking, politically speaking, socially speaking. We have several difficulties, especially young people, for them to have an opportunity to develop professionally. So we have seen a lot of people going away, moving away from the country. And in the past, there were a lot of people coming to the Buddhist Center looking for a spiritual path.
Y bueno, volvemos a entonces un momento.
Yes,
María Elena, tú vives en otra parte de
you live
Venezuela.
in another part of Venezuela.
¿Puedes decir algo
Can you tell us
vivir
how it
tan
is where
lejos
you
de
live
donde
in
hay un
Caracas,
centro?
living so far away from where there is a Buddhist center?
I live in Caracas, the capital city. And yes, it is complicated to be so far away from the Buddhist center. However, thanks to technology and digital technologies, and the fact that the use has increased due to the pandemic, I think that is a very positive side. The only positive side I can take from lockdown is that it has forced Triratna to move forward and to come into the digital world, a world that I had already explored so that I didn't feel isolated from the Sangha. And that I had made use of all the digital resources at my reach.
Gracias.
Thank you.
La primera vez que fuiste tú a visitar Venezuela era hace 4 años.
How long was that? 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 6 years, right, María Elena?
¿Qué era tu impresión, tanto de la sociedad, el lugar,
both
como
about
de la
the society, the place, and also about the Sangha?
Well, first I want to say that I am a person who enjoys traveling a lot, and I have visited many places in the world. And when one travels that much, one has an idea of what an airport looks like and that sort of thing. And of course, even when I knew that there was a special situation going on in Venezuela, when I first arrived, it was really a shock. I have been to India several times, and really the experience of getting to the airport in Caracas and then going to Merida, it was a lot more complex than traveling around India by train. Not only because of the economic needs, but also because there is a sort of inner pressure in the country that I had never felt anywhere else in the world. To travel from Caracas to Merida, it's not really such a lengthy distance, but it is a very complex trip. It was really an adventure for me to travel from. It wasn't as hard to go to. It was easier to get to India or Philippines than to get to Venezuela. And when I got to Merida, when I arrived in Merida, I was very moved by the difficult situation that they were going through at that time. All the population in Merida was needing essential things. And it was very interesting. The political and economical situation is very complex. It's something that you don't expect. But because even having money and carrying cash, dollars, it was impossible. It was impossible to use your credit card or something like that. I had never felt so, let me find the word, in such difficult situation as I felt in Merida. However, the people there, the people in the Sangha there, and the love that they showed towards the Sangha, and their warm welcome, and their interest in connecting with me and with Triratna was really wonderful. It was so wonderful that I kept going several times afterwards. I even brought Parami with me. Parami has her own memories of this adventure. But yes, it was very difficult. It was a shock, something I had never felt before, nowhere else in the world.
Yes, thank you. Gracias.
Sí,
pues
thank you.
Yo diría lo mismo para mí.
I would say the same for me. Arriving
Venezuela
in
y viajar de Venezuela a Mérida era como
from
nunca yo había
Merida from Caracas to Mérida was incredibly difficult.
Yo soy también
as I never had experienced before. I have traveled quite a bit myself.
Nunca he
and
sentido
normally
miedo
I have
en mi
never
vida
felt
en ningún
fear
parte del mundo. Y
in
sí, en
anywhere in the
Venezuela
world.
un poquito,
But in Venezuela, I
un
did
poco mucho, pero
experience fear,
algo, como una
little bit.
incomodidad, ¿no?
a sense of discomfort.
Entonces, perdón, me olvido qué idioma
So
estoy
I forget
hablando.
which language I am speaking.
Y Abaya Sara, cuando
And Abaya
escuchas
Sara,
lo que está diciendo
when you
Nyana
listen to
Dakini,
what
¿no?
Nyana
De su
Dakini is saying
experiencia y tal,
about her experience
¿qué
and
te
all,
parece? ¿Te
what
extraña
do you
o te
feel?
parece
Does it
normal que
feel
ella
strange,
ha tenido
or
esta
does it feel
experiencia?
normal that Nyana Dakini had that experience?
No, my first impression of her was of a super, super brave woman. I thought she was very courageous, very brave. As a matter of fact, our connection was so surprisingly immediate that I right away asked her to be my preceptor. Her courage really struck me. And then I should also mention that Sadayoti surprised me as well when she visited Venezuela. Same. She came when the situation was quite critical here.
And María Elena.
And María Elena.
¿Cómo, cuando escuchas a Nyana Dakini,
when you hear Nyana Dakini,
¿qué piensas? Qué tonta, ¿no? Porque
tampoco
es tan malo estar en Venezuela.
Because it's not so bad to
pues
be
no
in
me
Venezuela.
extraña, ¿no?
Or do
¿Qué
you
es tu
feel?
respuesta a lo que ha dicho?
I'm not surprised that Nyana Dakini felt like
that. To be honest, I think she has been very gentle when she has described the situation in Venezuela. She has been very kind, because I confess that when she came, I was very scared. I didn't know how our trip to Mérida was going to go. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know how to solve the issues. 2015 was a very, very hard year for Venezuela. It was not possible at all to use money in cash. And it wasn't officially accepted to use currency from other places. So when people came from abroad, their hands were tied. They could not spend any money. Now, 6 years later, there are rules and regulations. So now currency can be used. Foreign currency can be used. Now you can pay with a credit card, with an international credit card. Now it is different, which doesn't mean that I don't feel scared when I have to leave the capital city, because I do get away from my comfort zone, and I never know what to expect when I visit other parts of the country. Of course, the advantage is that when I go to Mérida, I know that I will be received by the Sangha and Abaya Sara, and she will take care of me, and I will be fine. They take care of everyone there. But yes, the first visits that you did to Venezuela, we were in the middle of the crisis. They were the most critical moments that we have lived in recent years. And I admire and rejoice in your brave. And it is surprising that even after that, you kept coming to Venezuela, because back then there was even a lack of food and a lack of such essential things, such as, I'm sorry, I have to tell you, I need to share this with you. Even to this moment, I keep buying silly amounts of toilet paper, because back then you couldn't get any, and it was awful. And it was part of the crisis that we were living when you first came to Venezuela, and you had to face this with us. And of course, this added to our emotional crisis and how we felt back then.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Está bien, María Elena. Nos has dado un poco
María Elena, you have given us a bit of a sense of
un saborcito
a flavor
de qué quiere decir cuando
of what it means
estamos
when people
una
say
crisis,
that
¿no?
people are living a crisis in Venezuela. A crisis, what kind of crisis?
Pues Abaya
An
Sara,
economic crisis.
Un poco más.
But Abaya Sara,
¿Cómo
Tell
lo
us a bit
vive
more
la gente
about
en
how
Venezuela
do people
esta
live
crisis? ¿Cómo es
this
de vivir
crisis in
allí?
Venezuela?
Sé que hay
How is
muchas
it to live
personas de
there?
Venezuela
I know that there's many people in this
en
retreat,
la llamada y
but
diferentes personas lo viven de
other
diferente
people,
manera,
other
pero
people,
tú
different
conoces
people
a
live
mucha
it
gente
or
que viene
experience
al
it in
centro.
different ways. But you know
¿Cómo
many people
dices
that
tú?
come to
¿Cómo
the
está
center.
viviendo la gente?
How
¿Qué
do
quiere
you say
decir tenemos una
what it means
crisis?
to be in a crisis? How do people experience that?
Yes, well, the way I see it is that there's a need, an important lack of money, the economy, our salaries. For example, I was a teacher at university, and when I retired, I had a salary that was all right, that could give me a comfortable life. But all that crumbled, fell apart. And the same thing happened to many people in other professions. So now we are seeing how we are trying to find new ways of to keep going. So that's the way I can summarize my perception, how we are all struggling to find a way forward.
And Ñanadakini, cuando tú o cuando nosotras hemos ido allí de visita,
when we have visited
¿qué
Venezuela,
notas? ¿Qué tipo de
what
cosas
do you
ves y
notice?
piensas,
What kind
wow,
of thing do
sí
you
que aquí
see
hay
and say,
crisis, ¿no?
wow, yes, there's crisis?
Estás
Muted.
con el micrófono cerrado.
Yes, one of the things that surprised me was the lack of food. Because I think the first 2 times I was there, it was a very complex situation because really people didn't have any money to buy food and there weren't any foods to buy to begin with. So maybe even if you had some money, you couldn't buy a lot of food. So I remember that adventure. Maria Elena and others should remember this. What it represented to organize the food for our retreat, because that was, and it took us days to organize this bit. So that we needed everybody to chip in and to say where we could get some cheese, where we could get some fruit. And it took days. And I will never forget this. I remember that in one of those retreats where the lack of food was at its peak, you must remember this, that that our fruit was a special kind of banana, a cambur, and we would split a banana for 4 people, between 4 people. An orange, 4 people could eat from the same orange, 4 people could eat from the same banana. Really, back then, what I can remember is the solidarity and just sharing, meditating together, cooking together. Well, I think that we didn't feel that bad about the lack of food, but I could notice it. For me, it was very moving. Just to notice, just to know how the lack of food was affecting people. And even in the last retreat, when things had changed and improved a little, even then it was quite complex to organize the whole food situation. Parami was there, and it still wasn't that easy to have everything that was needed to feed everybody on the retreat.
Y entonces tenemos un poquito más ahora de cómo era, ¿no? Del sabor. Una cosa que a mí me acuerdo era las colas
was the lines,
que se ve en
the
todas
queues.
las tiendas de
Every
cualquier tipo
store,
de
every shop had long
alimentación, ¿no?
queues.
Para comprar
Whoever
el
was
pan.
selling any food,
Me
there was
acuerdo que
a
había una
large
cola
queue.
que
To buy
salía de la
bread,
tienda y
there
fue
was
a
a
la
queue that
esquina
went
y
out from
aparte de
the
la
shop
esquina
and
que
went
fue a la
all
otra
the way
calle.
around
Y
the
creo que yo
corner
dije
and the block.
probablemente a Bayasara,
And probably I told
¿para qué
Abayasara,
están haciendo
what
cola?
are
¿No?
these
Yo
people
pensaba
doing?
que
Why
igual
are
era
they
para
queuing
algo
for?
muy
I thought they were queuing for something very special.
Y dices, esta es la
And
cola
Bayasara told me, no, it's the
pan.
queue to buy
Yo
bread.
pensaba, wow,
And I
las
thought,
cosas
wow,
que yo tomo por sentado.
so many things I take for
Y
granted.
aquí hacer
And
cola
here,
para el pan así.
you have to queue
Y entonces,
to buy a piece of bread.
¿qué ofrece el centro
So
budista?
what does the Buddhist Center offer?
Pregunto a tía Bayasara, como
ask
acabas
you,
de hacerte la
Bayasara, you
directora.
have just become
Enhorabuena.
the chair, you have just
Pero,
turned
¿qué
the chair
ofrece
of the Mérida Buddhist Center.
¿Para qué tener un centro budista?
But why
En
have
un
a Buddhist
lugar
center
donde hay muchos
in a place where
problemas sociales?
Where there is so
¿Qué
much
puedes
struggle,
ofrecer?
where there is so much social upheaval.
I wanted to mention the fact that now we still have a problem of fuel. We don't have enough fuel, petrol for the cars, and that makes it difficult even for people to move around. There's a lack of transportation, and services in general, other than transportation, are very bad. So what other countries have as an alternative in which they can have a spiritual path. And I remember someone mentioning this at some point. For example, the option to rent a place so that people could go and take meditation classes. That for us is unthinkable, because people are thinking about solving their most immediate needs, and they don't have any extra money to pay for meditation classes. They cannot give anything as a dana for receiving in exchange for some free classes. So for me, that has always been very important, to have that space, the space to offer these classes. The place we had was falling apart, so we took advantage of the lockdown to repair and give it some maintenance, and that has been possible only because of the dana that we have received from the Triratna order in general. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible at all. So the fact that we have a place where we can meditate, where we can teach free classes to spread the Dharma, to give an answer to people who come for us looking for something, but not any something, but really in despair, looking for an alternative, to get away from the idea that everything is so difficult. So a place where they can find another option of life. So we have devoted ourselves to remodeling this place during the pandemic, and we have seen the results. For example, on November 20th, we had the re-inauguration of our center, and so people were really interested and asking, when are we going back to face-to-face classes? So it's been very gratifying to think that we are on the right path. So now we have opened the face-to-face classes to the beginners, of course with limited capacity because of COVID, but now we have bigger spaces so we can have more people in. So I see that it has been something very important for the community.
That's very nice. That's very good. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. We have a video from that day, so later on.
That was precisely what I was going to say. I know that you have a little video, and we can see it before we finish our conversation today.
I just wanted to add something.
Sí, claro.
Yes, something that I have constantly heard from people going to the Mérida Buddhist Center is that they feel in a safe place. And I think that is super important for me to be able to provide a shelter to a human being where he feels safe. I think it's extraordinary.
Gracias. Y María Elena, como plan más personal,
as a more personal
¿qué significa
reflection,
para ti haber encontrado el Dharma,
what does it mean
viviendo
for
donde
you
vives y
to
como
have
vives?
found the Dharma, where you live and the way you live? What does it mean?
Well, honestly, for me, Dharma and the Buddhist Center, I feel that they have saved my life, literally, because I was a very confused youth, very angry at the world, very sad, almost depressed. And if I had gone on that path, I'm sure that my life would have been a lot shorter than it has been so far. And the Buddhist Center was my shelter. It was my real shelter, refuge in the Sangha, in everything, in every aspect. While I was living in Merida, I was there 7 days a week. And every time I go to Merida, I am 7 days a week at the Buddhist Center because it is the only place where I feel safe. And nowadays, it's like an oasis for us. My sisters in the Sangha, there are women that have 3 jobs, that need to walk to the Buddhist Center or need to drive for an hour to get there, and they still get there because it is the only space where they can find this feeling of feeling better. And so it's a gift, it's a treat to have a Buddhist center here in Venezuela. And yes, literally, I feel it saved my life. And it goes on doing that.
Qué bien, qué bonito.
That's very nice to hear. Very beautiful.
¿Qué te iba a preguntar? Estoy tan emocionada escuchándolas que estoy perdiendo un poco mi hilo.
I'm losing a little bit. I'm losing my thread. What I wanted to ask.
Bueno, he escuchado un poco cómo es para ti personalmente.
Well, I have heard a bit more about
Abhaya
what
Sara,
it is personally for you. But
Abhaya
Sara, what is your vision? What is your vision for the center?
¿Para qué te ve tan importante? Has dicho ya
que
sabemos que es un oasis, que se puede ofrecer cosas, pero ¿tienes algún tipo de visión cara al futuro?
Do you have a vision towards the future?
Yes. What I would really like to do is, now that we have the new activities going on, unfortunately, December is upon us, but we could start in January. What I would like to do is solidify the Sangha, strengthen it, and make it bigger so that it is an option for more people who want to explore this path. Because I believe that only with a very strong Sangha, and by the way, everybody else is invited to come if you dare to do so. I believe that a very solid Sangha can do many things for this country. Among them, to go out a little bit. Not at the moment. Right now, we're going to make this a solid Sangha, and we are going to make it possible that when the community grows a little bit more, we can go and spread our spiritual life and what it has done for us. There's a way that Maria Elena has just done. This has touched us in a very significant way when we were feeling lost.
Pues para cambiar un poquito el tema, pero
I want to change the subject a little bit, but not so much.
Has dicho, Abhaya Sara, que Ñana Dakini ha sido tu preceptora, que te ha dado tu nombre,
and she has given you your name.
Pues dado que tú vives en Mérida, en Venezuela, y ella vive en México, que son cuántos miles de kilómetros aparte, ¿no? ¿Cómo han llegado a tener una relación con suficiente intimidad y conocimiento para poder ordenar? Tú primero, Abhaya Sara, y después quiero escuchar también
First you, Abhaya Sara, and then I want to listen to Ñana Dakini.
Yes, I need to say that, again, this has been thanks to the Triratna community, because all these trips that we have made, like going to Mexico, because we went to our TFO retreats in Mexico, or the fact that you have been able to come to Venezuela. I know that in sometimes you have been paid for the trips yourselves, but some others it has been based on the generosity of Triratna, who has paid for those trips. So this has accounted for our friendship and for our closeness. I do feel like as if she were my sister. This has brought us closer together. So, for example, we have meetings in which the chairs of the centers in Mexico and Venezuela work together, as well as other meetings, which have been a challenge for me. Not only because of the day-to-day operations, but also because I have realized that this has helped me in my spiritual growth, because I have had to face many challenges that things that were part of me and they were not fully integrated, and they still aren't, but I have seen some progress. And here is where I am going to say that it has been very important, the name that I received from Ñanadakini, because my name means the one with the essence of fearlessness. So every time I think about it, I think like, oh, how am I going to achieve that? And then I remember my name and I remember my friends. I'm with Mitras in this meeting, for example, that have been a great support for me. Oh, here they are, 2 Mitras that have helped me a lot. And I have earned a great amount of friends, more than I had ever imagined. So now I feel I am not alone and I can do this.
Qué bonito. Y para ti, Ñanadakini,
and for you, Ñanadakini,
¿cómo ha sido llegar a conocer a esa mujer con suficiente profundidad para poder sentarte y ordenarla?
As to be able to sit in the kuti and ordain her?
There are several aspects to this question. The first one is that when 2 people spend time together under difficult situations, not with problems between them, but in an environment of difficulties, makes them grow closer together. Human beings, when they are in crisis, need to show solidarity towards one another. And that's something that I felt with Abhayasara. And she was taking care of me and she sheltered me when I first got there, and she gave me her support, and at that time, and that in turn made me trust her and made me understand all the suffering that was around the place. So that's one of the aspects. The other is that I had the opportunity to get to know Abhayasara and other Mitras in their daily lives, because I stayed in her house, and that allowed me to get a view of her actual life. So for me, that was super important in terms of getting to know a person. I was with her 24 hours a day, so I could rejoice in her virtues. And then when she could travel to Mexico, and she stayed at my home, and she met my partner and met my pets and get to know where I live. All that helps people get to know each other, and all those, and these times in which we got to see each other were very deep, because we shared experiences and we opened up to each other and to what our lives were at that moment, sharing. And knowing her, it was not hard at all to choose her name. It was a spontaneous feeling. And well, she's an incredibly fearless woman. If you ever knew her full story, you would see that that is her best quality in order for her to spread the Dharma, not only in Mérida, but wherever she wants.
Pues muy bonito, gracias.
Thank you.
Y escuchándote, me acuerdo que en uno de los días de retiro, hablando de comunidad,
in a retreat,
formando
when we were talking about community,
yo estaba diciendo a la gente, hay que involucrarte en la vida.
I was saying that for friendships to grow, you need to really get involved in the life of others, really interfere. Can you say that?
Y María
Really
Elena,
see the life of
tú has
the other
dicho que
person.
estás en
And María
formación
Elena,
para entrar en la orden, ¿no?
You're saying that you are in training towards the
¿Cómo puedes hacer eso
ordination.
viviendo allí
How can you
solita?
train for ordination?
Bueno,
if you
no
live
vives sola, pero
there
viviendo
in Caracas?
tan lejos
Well,
de
you
la
don't live
sangha,
alone,
¿no?
but you live
¿Cómo
far
estás
away from
preparando?
any
¿Qué quiere
sangha.
decir para
How
ti?
you are preparing for ordination? What does that mean for you?
Yes, I do live alone, para mí. And well, I come back again to discuss the advantages of the digital technologies that allow me to keep contact with all of you, almost as if we were in the same city. And I think that you would send me home because you see me so much. But because of the digital technologies, we are so much in contact and we have great communication.
Oops.
And sorry, the sound went. Cannot hear anything. Okay, audio is back. And there is a Kula of Dharmacharinis that support Venezuela, and they are wonderful. And I have contacts one-on-one. I have a call with each of them, with Nyanadakini as well. I try to keep in contact as much as possible. I do admit that I am not the best at communicating and maintaining in touch, but the digital technologies have made it easier. And as well, I do try to be there face-to-face every time it is possible. When there's a retreat, an activity, anything that's available. And for me, it has been a magical training, an incredible journey. And every day I learn more and more about myself, about the order, about everything that we do. It has been an interesting journey, and I am enjoying it a lot, to be honest.
Qué bien.
How nice.
¿Y cuántas personas hablas de la sangha de Mérida?
You talk about
más o menos
the Mérida
Sangha.
Estamos hablando. How many people are involved in the Sangha in Mérida? Abaya Sara?
Well, before the pandemic, there was an average of, for example, on Saturday, when we had the most people, there were around 20 people. But during the pandemic, during the lockdown, we have lost some people. So now, that's why I never thought that we would have such a turning up at the reopening. We could reconnect with people, and there were many more than I expected. There were 21 people there. Well, of course, we kept our safe distance and all that. We were wearing our masks. But I hope and expect that now that we have more space in our meditation room and our study room, we have a greater capacity, and we will be able to get more people.
There was also people there through Zoom.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. There were 21 people there face to face. That were more than expected. And of course, there were some others following us via Zoom.
Bueno, una última pregunta, creo, y después podemos ver el video. Y después me gustaría abrirlo para ver si hay gente escuchando que le gustaría preguntar algo. Pero mi última pregunta.
My last question.
Bueno, a las tres, pero a Abaya Sara y María Elena en particular. ¿Qué podemos hacer? Las personas que no viven allí, pero nos gustaría apoyarles. ¿Qué podemos hacer? María Elena, ¿qué pedirías tú a la gente?
What would you ask for? What would you ask the people?
Well, first, for us, it is very important to be known and to be heard. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I speak on behalf of the rest of my Sangha. I am very honored and privileged to be the voice of our community here in Venezuela, and that is very important. And on the other hand, I think it would be very important to support projects in which people can get involved that in the long term can become self-sustainable projects, which is one of the things that concern me a lot and that I have been thinking about a lot during this retreat. I have been wondering what we can do here in Venezuela that can be self-sustainable in the future and that we can keep going and make grow in the future. But at any rate, it is very important for us, I think, to know that we have doors in which we can knock, people we can ask for support, and that generally when it's about projects, the main issue tends to be money, which we don't have enough of, and we have little access to here. But if we get support, we can learn how to generate more money and learn how to do fundraising, which is a word that doesn't even exist in Spanish, but I think that's what we need the most at this moment. And of course, to feel that we are part of something greater. That is the opportunity that we have gotten with all this digital movement. Is a sense that we are a sense of belonging that we now have. And now we feel that we are part of something greater, something bigger, and we are not alone. So that helps us to visualize how we can help others. And yes, we want to keep it going. Well, at least that's what I believe.
I see that Chandradasa is putting in the chat the info, the link, if somebody wants to donate some money to the situation in Venezuela. Whatever money we raise from this evening, we are going to give directly to the Merida Sangha.
Bueno, me gusta que has dicho también, bueno, lo del dinero que es súper importante, pero también que tengan voz.
But you have said something about having a voice.
Y por eso en parte me alegro que tantas de ustedes de Venezuela hayan venido en este retiro. Ha sido muy conmovedor para mí a ver cada día como 6, 7, 8 personas de la Sangha de Venezuela. Me encanta que hayan podido asistir a este retiro.
To see that.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Y Abhaya Sara, ¿quieres añadir algo?
Would you like to add
¿Qué podemos
something?
hacer para
What can we do
apoyarlos?
to support you?
Yes, I would just add to what Maria Elena has just mentioned, that for me it is very important, the connections among people. I really have felt that I am not alone. And that for me has been something wonderful. To feel that I have everybody's support, that I have been supported by all of you, even in the past. By the Sangha in Mexico, every time I went there, that has been for me an unforgettable experience. And I'm really grateful. I don't even know how to explain this. I do hope that our circumstances get better and that everybody can come and visit us and to be able to do marvelous projects in Latin America and everywhere else.
Because you have relationships. There is a relationship between the different centers in the whole of the Americas. We have had retreats, we have had conventions, and that's the way you know Chandradasa, for example, because there's people that have come from the US and
todas las Américas unidas.
To have all the whole of the Americas united.
Bueno,
in this kind of
Nyana Dakini, ¿tú quieres añadir algo antes de ver el video?
Anything else before we go to the video?
Well, I just want to extend an invitation to Dharmacharinis and Dharmacharis, members of the orders, Mitras Training Coordination that want to go to Venezuela. And I think it would be very good to create a network of support.
Sí, muy bien.
To support
yes,
and to get to know
para
the Sangha in
añadir, me
Venezuela.
imagino que Nyana Dakini estaría de acuerdo conmigo. Es una Sangha súper hospitalaria.
It is a very hospitable Sangha.
Te cuidan,
very warm. There's a lot of warmth. They look after you very well.
Bueno, gracias a las tres
thank you to the three of you
la
for
conversación. A mí
the
me
conversation
ha
we have had.
conmovedor.
I have found it
Y
very moving.
a Paula y Sada
Thank you
por
to
sus
Paul and
traducciones,
Sadjoti for their
aunque
translations,
no han terminado aún.
although they are still doing it.
Y no sé exactamente cómo funciona
exactly
el video,
how
porque
it works
no sé si vamos a... Es todo en español, ¿no?
It's all in Spanish.
So, yes, but it's very short. It's only in Spanish, but it is very short.
So we're going to watch
the most important part is the image.
It is in Spanish,
pero es muy corto, entonces por lo menos da un poco del sabor de aquel día, del día de la Sangha y la inauguración, y también el día en que Abhayasara llegó a tomar formalmente el puesto de ser directora. Entonces, pues muchísimas gracias. Y después del video vamos a todos volver a la misma sala y Sadajoti y Paula también pueden salir de su sala y vamos a tendremos como 15 minutos o algo para abrir para preguntas o comentarios.
Ask questions and comments.
Ok, Abhayasara, para ti.
Over to you.
vas a ver la gente probablemente va a verte como una persona que debe ser perfecta. Deja las expectativas, porque Abhayasara, Sadajoti, quien sea, son seres humanos.
La facultad de ciencias. Y hay dos la tener a través del video. Y si no, ninguno de nosotros.
Para que lo lleve a su casa y lo entregue al próximo director.
De acuerdo.
Que lo hagas. Bendiciones en tu vida.
Gracias.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum.
Que todos ellos,
hasta que todos ellos
hayan alcanzado la paz.
Sarvabhudana Bhavana Sada Suti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sarvamangalam Rakhantu Sarvadevata Sarvadharma
Ay, qué bonito.
How beautiful. How beautiful.
Oh, you're out of the interpretation room. They've closed, so.
We're not in the interpretation room anymore?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Everybody, okay. Entonces, voy a seguir en español y sigues traduciendo al inglés.
So I'm going to continue in Spanish, and Sara Jyoti will keep translating into English.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, no. Gracias, Abaya Sara, por compartir el video.
Thank you, Abaya Sara, for sharing the video.
Y la verdad es que sí, que daba la impresión del centro que súper bonito.
And it did really give a flavor of the center, which is really beautiful.
Gracias.
Entonces, vamos a abrir la sala, por decirlo.
So we are going to open the room for questions?
Yeah. Entonces, si alguien quiere comentar o preguntar algo, se puede usar su manito digital.
So if you want to say something or ask a question, you can use your digital hand. It's the easiest way.
Y para que sepan todos, si estamos grabando el video, entonces si te pones a preguntar algo, probablemente sales en el video, en la grabación. Entonces, si no quieres que salgas tu carita, pues puedes apagar tu video cuando preguntes la cosa o digas la cosa.
So you all know that the session is being recorded. So if you ask a question, you will show in the screen. But if you don't want to be seen in the video, you can always close your camera so that we can listen to your question without seeing your face.
Y veo que hay gente que ha llegado después de que hayamos empezado la sesión.
And I see that some people have arrived after we started the session.
And I think some of you, y creo que algunos de ustedes no estaban en el retiro.
And I think some of you were not in the retreat. You had just come for this session.
Entonces, una bienvenida muy, muy fuerte para cada uno de ustedes.
So a very special welcome to each of you.
Y si no sabes dónde poner tu mano digital y quieres decir o preguntar algo, por favor, pon algo en el chat para que veamos.
And if you don't know where the digital hand tool is, you can always write something in the chat for us to read it and answer your question.
Pero el mano digital está donde se encuentra el corazoncito y las manitas y todo eso. Dice allí algo de poner la mano. No sé cómo es en español.
The digital hand tool is where you put the hearts and the faces and all that, all the reactions. Over there's a place where you can raise your hand, your digital hand.
Y sale así como en mi pantalla ahora.
And it shows like this, the way it looks in my screen right now.
Adelante.
So over to you guys if you want to ask a question.
Can I just say, because there was a question in the chat earlier about asking Maria Elena why people couldn't become mitras in Venezuela in the past. So maybe we could start there.
¿Quieres traducirlo?
Oh, yes. Había una pregunta en el chat hace ratito de por qué las mujeres no se podían hacer mitras en Venezuela. Entonces, tal vez una pregunta por la que podemos empezar.
¿La respondo yo? Bueno, voy. Es mi tema favorito para responder. A los principios, cuando Triratna aún era amigos de la orden budista occidental, Aobo, no podía...
Pao is going to translate you into English, hopefully? Or shall I do it, Pao?
No, I can. Well, at the beginning, when we were still part of the FWBO,
no se podía hacer mitras mujeres si no había dharmacharini en el centro budista de pertenencia.
You couldn't become a mitra if you were a woman and there was not a dharmacharini or a female order member at the center.
Y esto fue hasta 2004 cuando cambió esta forma de normativa o regulación.
And this policy, this regulation went on till 2004.
Y no fue sino hasta 2015 que yo volví y decidí ser mitra.
So it wasn't until 2015 that I went back to the Buddhist center and asked to become a mitra.
Pedí otra vez, o sea, pedí por milésima vez.
Well, I asked again. I asked for the millionth time.
I'm going to add something. If somebody'd like to translate me into Spanish, I'm going to switch into English.
Voy a cambiar a inglés si alguien me quiere traducir al español.
Yeah. This wasn't just in Latin America. It was something that was, during a particular period, was across the world, actually.
Esto no era nada más en Latinoamérica. Esto sucedió durante un periodo particular en todo el mundo.
And it wasn't always the case. There was you used to be able to be a mitra, and then there was a period where for some years it was felt better not to have women mitras where they weren't in relationship with women order members.
Y esto no fue siempre así. Antes sí te podías hacer mitra como mujer, pero después hubo un periodo de tiempo en el que pensamos que era mejor que no se hicieran mitras las mujeres hasta que hubiera realmente una dharmacharini con la cual pudieran entrar en relación en el centro en el que estaban.
And it was really as much as anything to protect the women mitras.
Y esto era más que nada para proteger a las mujeres mitras.
Because there was a short period of time, and I will name no names, where some men order members were getting sexually and romantically involved with some of the women mitras.
Porque hubo un periodo de tiempo, y no voy a mencionar nombres, pero hubo un tiempo en el que algunos miembros de la orden, hombres, se involucraban sexualmente con mitras mujeres.
And not that that was necessarily a problem. It wasn't necessarily an ethical issue, but it meant that those women mitras became very dependent on their relationship with the men order members.
No es que necesariamente eso fuera un problema o que fuera un tema ético, pero esto significaba que estas mujeres se convertían en personas muy dependientes de esa relación con el miembro de la orden hombre.
It happened in a few particular instances.
Sucedió en algunos puntos, en algunas instancias muy particulares.
And the women mitras ended up leaving the movement because they fell out with the men or whatever happened. They ended up feeling that they didn't have a home.
Y en estas ocasiones sucedió que algunas de estas mitras terminaron yéndose de la sangha porque, por ejemplo, si terminaban con el miembro de la orden o lo que fuera, ellas terminaban sintiendo que no tenían un hogar en esta sangha.
And this was a period where there were many, many more men order members than women order members.
Y este fue un periodo en el que había muchos más miembros de la orden hombres que dharmacharinis.
And so there was that period, and then it became very obvious that this meant that some, women that really should have been able to be mitras were being blocked in a way through no fault of their own.
Y después quedó claro que muchas de las mujeres que en los centros budistas que querían hacerse mitras estaban siendo bloqueadas por algo que no era su culpa, ¿no?
Especially in situations where maybe the nearest women order member was 5,000 kilometers away.
Especialmente en situaciones en donde la dharmacharini más cercana estaba, por ejemplo, a 5,000 kilómetros de distancia.
I can't quite remember exactly how the change came about, but it became very obvious that it was too fixed and too much of a rule rather than a support, which is what it initially was supposed to be.
No sé exactamente cómo ocurrió el cambio, pero sí llegó un momento en el que quedó claro que se había convertido en algo demasiado fijo o algo que se estaba viviendo mucho como una regla y ya no estaba funcionando como el apoyo que originalmente se concibió.
In fact, it was partly because of that Paramachita and I moved to Spain in 1992.
De hecho, fue una de las razones por las cuales yo y Paramachita nos fuimos a vivir a España en 1992.
And also we offered to become more involved with the Sangha in Mexico.
Y la razón por la cual nos ofrecimos a involucrarnos más de cerca con la Sangha de México.
So that's a little bit of the history of it.
Entonces esto es un poquito más como de la historia de ese tema, ¿no?
It's one of those things where I think something begins as a support, in this case a support for the woman.
Es uno de estos casos en donde algo empieza con la intención de ser un apoyo, en este caso un apoyo para las mujeres.
And ends up being a block.
Y termina siendo un bloqueo, un obstáculo.
I don't think it was the most wonderful moment in Triratna's history, personally.
No creo que haya sido el momento más hermoso de la historia de Triratna, personalmente.
But anyway, fortunately, it did change in 2004. So it was maybe, I don't know how long the period was, but.
Pero bueno, por suerte esto cambió. No me acuerdo qué tan largo fue ese periodo, pero bueno, cambió.
But I'm a little bit sad we've ended up with so much time on that because it's now almost time to end the session. So I would like it if there was any other questions more relevant to, more current, more appropriate to now before we go.
Qué pena que pasamos tanto tiempo contestando esta pregunta porque, bueno, quisiera ver si hay otras preguntas relevantes a lo que hemos estado discutiendo.
And also, I'm happy to carry on a little bit longer if it's helpful. And if anybody needs to go, then please feel free to slip out.
Y estoy contenta de seguir adelante un poquito más allá de la hora. Entonces, si te tienes que ir a cierta hora, simplemente pues salte de la sesión.
And Akashavajra has his digital hand up.
Akashavajra tiene su mano digital levantada.
So you need to
yes, thank you. I just wanted to come on and say thank you for this evening.
Solamente quiero dar las gracias.
These brave women. It sounds.
Oh, you've muted again.
You're muted, Akashavajra. You're muted.
I know.
There you go.
That's it. No, I muted myself and then went back on. Yes, it's just an honor to have been here tonight, to have heard all this whole story of what's happening in Venezuela.
Ha sido muy bueno estar aquí esta noche y escuchar lo que ha pasado, lo que ha estado pasando en Venezuela.
We see it on the news and it is quite frightening in just the general situation. But to see it from a personal point of view is very heartening and it's very emotional. I mean, I feel it quite strongly.
Lo vemos en las noticias, pero haberlo escuchado personalmente de ustedes me conmueve mucho.
Yes, I'd love to go. I love to go to these kind of places, but I'm amazed at your bravery, Parami.
Me gustaría mucho ir a estos lugares, pero bueno, yo realmente admiro mucho tu valentía, Parami.
I've only seen Venezuela from Bonaire when I was flying to Peru. So a wonderful thunderstorm over Venezuela.
Yo recuerdo de haber visto Venezuela desde arriba, desde el aire, cuando volé a Perú y había una tremenda tormenta abajo en Venezuela.
Anyway, thank you again.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah. I have to say, Venezuela is an extremely beautiful country. The parts
Quiero decir que Venezuela es un país increíblemente bello, al menos las partes que yo he visto.
Yeah, we had a wonderful walk in the Andes on my last trip. Yes.
Hicimos una caminata por los Andes cuando estuve por allá.
Henriette.
quisiera, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, sí.
Quisiera complementar un poco la visión de mis compañeras sobre Venezuela, porque me preocupa un poco que tengan miedo de visitarnos.
Okay, I would just like to add to what my partners in Venezuela have said, because I'm a little concerned that now you are feeling fearful of visiting us, feeling scared.
Y voy a hablar de la cara bella de Venezuela.
So I'm going to tell you about the beautiful things in Venezuela.
Venezuela no es solamente Mérida, Venezuela es un país enorme, lleno de gente muy alegre, muy espiritual, muy creativa, con mucha paciencia. Fíjense, tanta paciencia.
Thank you, Henrietta. Venezuela is more than just Mérida, more than just the city. Venezuela is a country full of people who are very joyful, very spiritual, very creative, and full of patience.
Tanta paciencia y tanto pacifismo que a pesar de todo lo que se ha hecho por ponernos en guerra, no se ha logrado. Debo decir...
So patient and so peaceful that even though people have tried to call us into a war, no, it hasn't been done.
Debo decir, y espero que ustedes sepan, que la verdad no solamente está en un medio de comunicación. Hay una verdad establecida por los medios más poderosos. A través de esos medios es que se suele conocer a Venezuela. Por eso quiero decirle cosas que no se dicen.
Espérate, espérate.
I just want to tell you, and I'm sure that you're aware that the information on the news can be biased sometimes, and we only listen to one side of the story, which is why I think it's important to tell you about the other side.
Hemos resistido estoicamente el robo de nuestros recursos, el bloqueo de nuestra economía. Estamos en una guerra entre dos bloques políticos en uno de los países más ricos del mundo con muchos intereses.
So we have been through a lot. We have been through people stealing our resources from us, and we are in the middle of a war between two very strong political sides.
Y creo que para terminar, es muy compleja la situación para describírselas. Habría que estudiar mucho para entenderla, pero estamos en un proceso de cambio muy difícil.
And just to finish up, let me tell you that the situation is incredibly complex for me to describe it in this time, in this short time. We would need to study it in depth, but I just want to tell you that we are in the process of a change, and this process has been hard on everyone.
Y es muy interesante porque con muchas cosas en contra, una nueva sociedad. Y esa nueva sociedad, yo anoche escuchando a Parami, decía, sí, es posible. Venezuela, no solo Mérida, y no solo el centro budista de Mérida, Venezuela es un campo fértil para el budismo, por su alegría, por su humor, por su generosidad, por su creatividad.
Espera,
para. Es que no puede traducir si hablas tan largo.
And I just want to say that yesterday, listening to Parami talk about the new society, I was thinking about how Mérida and how Venezuela in general is a place to do that. It's a place where there are many good conditions to have a new society.
Sí, gracias, Henrietta.
Gracias.
Thank you, Henrietta.
And of course, I don't want to give the impression that I understand everything about Venezuela, because I know that I don't. It's very complex.
Yo no quiero dar la impresión de que yo entiendo todo lo que sucede en Venezuela, porque evidentemente no, es algo muy complejo.
I do recognize that, and I'm glad
Quiero
you
reconocer
mentioned.
eso.
And I'm glad you mentioned the beauty, because, as I say, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited.
Y me da mucho gusto que menciones el tema de la belleza, porque efectivamente es uno de los lugares más bellos que he visitado.
But of course, what we're looking at in this retreat and in this session is how does the Dharma help you overcome difficulties?
Pero el énfasis de esta sesión, lo que hemos estado viendo, es cómo el Dharma nos ayuda a superar dificultades.
So obviously it's a focus in a particular way.
Entonces es un foco en un tema muy particular, con un énfasis particular.
And I do recommend that people get to know some of our Sangha in Venezuela, because that is a way to get to know the bigger picture.
Y les recomiendo que se acerquen a conocer a nuestra Sangha en Venezuela, porque esta es una manera de entender un poquito más el panorama completo.
Gracias. Leticia. Leti.
Hola. Hola.
Oh no, it's over to you, Pau.
Estoy muy feliz de estar acá con todos ustedes, hablando.
I'm very happy to be here with you, with all of you.
Hablando sobre este país maravilloso.
Talking about my wonderful country.
Yo nací en Chile y llegué a Venezuela en 1976 huyendo de la dictadura de Pinochet.
I was born in Chile, but I moved to Venezuela in 1976, running away from the political problems from Pinochet, by Pinochet.
The dictatorship.
Venezuela es un país, ha sido muy hospitalario, de miles de extranjeros de todas partes del mundo que han venido huyendo de guerras.
Venezuela has been a great host to hundreds of people from all nationalities that have been running away from wars in their countries.
Acá hay gente que vino huyendo de Europa, gente que vino huyendo de las dictaduras del sur, gente que ha venido huyendo y que ha encontrado aquí un hogar.
We have people from Europe, people from South America that came here looking for asylum and that found a home here.
Aquí hablaba yo con Saraha, estamos hermanados todos. Aquí hay gente de todos los colores, de todas las raíces, de todos los pueblos, y aquí no se hace distinción entre unos y otros.
I was just talking to Saraha, and we were saying that here we are one big family, that there is no distinction in terms of race, origin, or anything else. We are just one big family.
Eso es muy hermoso.
And that is very beautiful.
La convivencia entre todos, porque hay una profunda raíz espiritual vinculada a nuestros orígenes africanos, indígenas, que invitan a la integración, a la hospitalidad.
Okay, it is great the way we all get along together, and I think we can find the roots for this in our spiritual origins in Africa and indigenous peoples, and they all invite us to integrate.
Esa red de amor me ha hecho sentir segura siempre en este país.
That network of love has made me feel safe in this country.
Bien.
Y quiero también decir que a Venezuela se ha intentado importar la violencia, se han traído mercenarios para generar violencia y todo el pueblo lo ha rechazado.
Bring violence into Venezuela, but the people here have always rejected it.
Hoy estamos viviendo la victoria de la paz.
Today we are celebrating the victory of peace.
Y eso es muy bueno.
And that is great.
Hemos soportado el hambre, hemos soportado la ausencia de medicamentos.
We have endured the lack of medicine, drugs.
Hemos soportado el sabotaje a los servicios públicos.
We have endured the sabotage to public services.
Hemos soportado el sabotaje a Internet.
We have endured the sabotage to the Internet even.
Hemos soportado el asesinato de nuestra gente.
We have endured how our people have been killed.
Y lo hemos soportado de pie y con alegría.
And we have done so on our feet and filled with joy.
Hemos ido a nuestras raíces a buscar nuestros alimentos originales.
We have gone back to our roots to look for our original way of nourishment.
Ahora hay más semillas.
Now there are more seeds.
Ahora hay más personas que cultivan.
Now there are more people growing their own food.
Ahora hay más personas que reparan la tecnología a la que casi no tenemos acceso.
Now there are more people getting involved in fixing the technology that we barely have access to.
Yo me siento más libre. Gracias.
And I feel more free. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Gracias.
Gracias, Leticia.
Yeah. Well, like always, it's very good to get all the different parts of the picture.
Como siempre, es muy bueno ver las diferentes rincones de la visión del panorama.
And one of the things that comes to me as I listen to people share their stories.
Y una de las cosas que se me viene a la mente cuando escucho a las personas compartir sus historias
is just how complicated and complex a situation it really is.
El tomar conciencia de lo complicadas, de lo complejas que son las situaciones realmente.
And that there's suffering and there's joy.
Hay sufrimiento y hay alegría.
And I have seen both of those things in my visits to Venezuela. I've seen the beauty and I've seen the darker side.
Y he visto esas cosas en mis visitas a Venezuela. He visto la belleza y también he visto el lado más oscuro.
And it seems very important as Buddhist practitioners that we're able to overcome that polarization.
Y creo que es muy importante para nosotros como practicantes budistas que seamos capaces de ir más allá de estas polarizaciones.
Whether it's, whether it's polarized politically or polarized by class, it's so important that we all pull together.
Ya sea que las polarizaciones sean políticas o que tengan que ver con la clase social, creo que es muy importante que podamos mantenernos unidos.
And I have met some really beautiful people in Venezuela, really.
Yo he conocido gente realmente hermosa en Venezuela.
And I'm coming back as soon as it's possible.
Y yo voy a regresar para allá tan pronto como sea posible.
Venezuela was the last place I visited before lockdown.
Venezuela fue el último país que visité antes del confinamiento.
Nyana Dakini and I got back out of Venezuela and then everything closed.
Nyana Dakini y yo salimos de Venezuela y poco después, ¡prum!, todo cerró.
I'm very aware of the time, and for some of you on continental Europe, it's after 10 o'clock.
Estoy consciente del tiempo y para algunos de ustedes en Europa continental ya pasa de las 10 de la noche.
But it's really been absolutely lovely to hear from everybody.
Pero ha sido realmente hermoso escuchar de todos ustedes, de todas ustedes.
And I think it would be nice before we go if we did unmute and just say goodbye and thank you.
Gracias. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Gracias, gracias.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos. Gracias.